Hello and welcome back to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. Our last podcast recording was in October. We're now the 13th of February, but we're back. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by the usual crew of Mark O'Hare, Adrian, Clarke, and Miguel Delaney. Now, there's plenty of really good action this week to get stuck into, but before we do, we'll take a look at the outright betting just to give people a flavour and then bring the lads in on terms of what pricing we currently have on matchbook.com. So you can see Manchester City are still the favourites for the Champions League, but a little bit bigger than they were before the World Cup. They're currently 3.1. Bayern Munich are 7.0. PSG 10.5. Liverpool 12.0. Same price as Real Madrid. Napoli 13.5. We'll get to them in a second. Chelsea are 16.0. Spurs 22.0. Benfica 30.0. And Inter 36.0. It's 65 or 55 and bigger the rest. So Mark, look, firstly, I want to give you props on your Napoli bet and a back-to-lay option. It was in the back-to-lay section. 151.0 was widely available throughout, not just on Matchbook, but all the sports books as well. They're in around 13.5. Firstly, I just wanted to get your kind of take on where they're currently at, because you could pick holes in the form in the group stage, perhaps with Ajax and Liverpool in there.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I think when the Champions League draw is made for the knockout stages, it's always best to sort of hold fire until February, because a lot can change in football in a couple of months, particularly with a transfer window in between. But on this occasion, we've had a World Cup as well. So I think it's quite interesting when you look at the outright market, because the top 6 or 7, or at least the teams below 20-1 in the market, are either in poor form, or you can pick holes in almost all of them and suggest that they're not quite at their best. So I think that's 7 teams at the top of the market, whereas Napoli are the only ones that stand outside, really playing exceptional football consistently. But the price doesn't do it for me right now at 13.5. There's a reason why they are 13.5 and not probably slightly bigger. Firstly, it's just the luck of the draw, really. They're playing Frankfurt, which is obviously their reward for winning their group. Frankfurt is no gimme whatsoever, though. Must be said, that's going to be a tricky tie over 2 legs. But also, if you look at the draw elsewhere, Bayern are playing PSG and Liverpool are playing Real Madrid. That's 4 teams in the top 6 of the market. So we're going to lose 2 of them at this stage. And if you look elsewhere, Club Brugge, Porto, Inter, and Benfica, you're going to get 2 of those teams in the quarterfinals. So if Napoli do progress, you could easily be playing a game against Club Brugge or Benfica, for example, for a place in the semi-final. So that's why they're a little bit shorter than I would probably have them on a normal day. But that's just draw-based. Obviously, destroying Liverpool and Ajax, as you say, was quite incredible, really, the way in which they did it. But the form lines from those 2 performances have to be downgraded a little bit, because we've since discovered that those 2 teams are nowhere near the sky-high levels we probably expected of them from previous campaigns. And also, I would say there's a bit of Serie A tax I think we need to put on Italian teams in the Champions League these days as well. I love my Italian football, but you've got to go a long way back now to see some good, solid, consistent success from the Italians. Milan won it in 2006-07. Only 4 Italian teams have reached the semi-finals since then. That's 4 Italian semi-finalists from a possible 60, which is a 6.5% of all semi-finalists since 2006-07 have been Italian. Obviously, Inter won it in 2010. Juve have been in the final twice, but we basically had no Italian semi-finalists in the last 4 tournaments, and that is a concern. The league has sort of dropped down in standard compared to some of its rivals, but I guess the positives are Napoli are injury-free. They're playing with momentum, belief. There is room to manoeuvre in the title race as well. They are quite clear there, so that potentially they can start to focus on sort of achieving double success. But yeah, I'm just being a little bit snooty about the price, because obviously we got them at a huge price, and now to see them at 13.5, it's kind of a bit like after the Lord Mayor's show, we kind of missed out on the good stuff. So I think there possibly are better prices to attack elsewhere.
Okay, we'll come back to you shortly for your selection. And anyone who's looking to back and lay, Matchbook Betting Exchange is brilliant to lay. They're currently around the 13.5, 14.0 to lay. Adrian, Clarke, over to you. Bayern Munich haven't been pulling up trees in the Bundesliga this season, but you still make them a bet here at around 6.8, 7.0.
Well, following on from what Mark said, I can pick more holes than a lot of the other teams. I think Manchester City are too short, really, in my opinion, given that defensively, I still think they're as vulnerable against the elite teams this season as they have been in the past. Are they better going forward? Well, they've got Haaland, but not convinced that they're a more fluid attacking force than they were previously. So I don't think anything's changed in regards to City's prospects of winning the Champions League. Of course, they're going to be one of the favourites, but I see real flaws in them if you can get at their defence. And obviously the very best teams will get at their defences. Yeah, elsewhere, all of the leading contenders sort of faltering a little bit, which kind of leaves me with Bayern Munich, who were really, really professional during the group stage, weren't they? Obviously, they won home and away against Barcelona. They beat Inter home and away. They had a perfect phase one, Bayern Munich, and they've got great strength in depth. They've got huge Champions League experience, and I don't know, just beginning to wonder. And Nagelsmann has sort of hit the post in this competition before. I just think this might be their time to shine. And obviously, if they can get through, one of the other reasons I'm flagging them at this price, which is 7.0, is that if they knock out PSG, and that's a big if, of course, but if they do, then that price will tumble and they won't be too far behind Manchester City, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's definitely a game to attack if you fancy either PSG or Bayern for sure, because if you get that coin flip in your favor, it's going to tumble in price, as Adrian touched on there. Miguel, you're heading over to Paris and going to watch PSG Bayern. We'll touch on that, and that is one of your picks as well. But I want you to focus on your second pick, which jumped off the page at me here. It's I don't know if you've been watching football for the last 4 to 6 weeks, but Liverpool 12.5 to win the Champions League. Make the case.
Right. First, this has high potential to be odd Champions League season for the same reason we might be seeing it across domestic leagues, because of the massive disruption of the World Cup and just how, even on a basic level, how that will mean the best teams won't be able to go on all fronts. So I have a bit of a suspicion this could go for basically the first time since the mid-2000s, which was also a period where the big clubs were adapting to changes to the fixture list and the calendar. And that saw a lot of teams that kind of finished 4th, 5th, 6th in their league go to distance in the Champions League. Liverpool did it in 04-05. Chelsea did it. Milan did it, as Mark's mentioned. And, of course, we had the last real big surprise winner in Porto. And I wonder, could this feed into the sort of season where it actually suits someone that isn't doing well domestically, the way that you see that transformation that happens. So just from that perspective, I think, I know their form's been so bad. I just have a little bit of an inkling of it. I mean, generally, I think I'll go with Adrian. Probably the team with the most baseline competence this year. It feels like it's Bayern Munich. But I think in a season where basically we should be primed for the unexpected, that there is maybe something in Liverpool.
Yeah, and look, their price before the competition started was 7.6, so that price has gone up. So it could be a little bit of value. Mark O'Hare, in the horse racing world, right, when Cheltenham anti-posts are very popular markets, and when someone tips up a horse at, say, 16.0, and then 3 weeks later you say, oh, I backed that horse at 16.0, he's now 20.0. You're known as a shrew in capital letters on the Twitter sphere. Tottenham Hotspur, 19.5 pre-tournament. They're now 22.0. And you tipped them up at 19.5, but you're going to go back in again at 22.0.
Whoa, he's picking Spurs. What's going on?
He's picking Spurs, Adrian, yeah.
I can explain why. I mean, the guys have already sort of deconstructed the top end of the market. City are too short. They're that price for a similar reason why Napoli are as well, because two of their biggest rivals are going to exit the competition at this stage. They're playing Leipzig, which is not the walkover that the market suggests. That could be a really dangerous tie over 2 legs. I think obviously PSG Bayern is a bit of a knife edge game. Bayern are favoured by the market. I actually been a little bit stronger on PSG, which we'll get to. Liverpool, Real Madrid, for the same reason. We're going to lose one of those two teams. I can actually buy into Miguel's argument there on Liverpool. I agree with him. Key players coming back from injury as well in the next couple of weeks too. But obviously you've got to get past Real Madrid, who almost can never be beaten in this competition. We've touched on Napoli, then you get to Chelsea, and actually Spurs' form line is stronger than Chelsea. So the reason being, Tottenham are playing Milan in this last 16 tie, which I think is a passable offering for them. Obviously, when the draw was made in December, it looked a more stern opposition than they are going to get this time around. And if they were to get through, as I mentioned already, it's just luck of the draw, really. You could easily draw one of Club Brugge, Benfica, or Inter and Porto, and Spurs would be favourites to get through. Spurs would then be favourites to get to the semi-finals of the competition. So that 22.0 price will collapse quite significantly. And I know Conte's record in this competition is poor. I think sometimes that's sort of been made up to be a little bit stronger than it really should be. There's been sort of circumstances behind his poor form in this competition previously. And obviously losing Bentancur to injury at the weekend is a real massive blow too. But I think they've got the firepower to match most teams in Europe. I think the defence has showed improvements in recent weeks, by Saturday against Leicester. And I think there's a ceiling there which they haven't quite hit yet. And if they were to sort of put it all together, this is a team who consistently get the better of, or at least match Manchester City, home and away. So if you can match the best team in the competition, why can't you do that against all the others? You're 22.0. That's a massive price for me. And look, we've had at least two English semi-finalists in 3 of the last 4 seasons, and 6 of the last 10 finalists in this competition have been Premier League teams as well. So if we think Man City are too short, Liverpool could easily be going out against Real Madrid. That's a very tough opponent. Chelsea are in a worse state than Spurs right now, and they've probably got a more difficult tie in the last 16 too. So, why the sort of snobby attitude towards Tottenham at 22? I'm only looking for an opportunity for a price which is going to not necessarily collapse, but contract at least in the next couple of weeks. And if Spurs were to get through against Milan, the draw gets you on side, then yeah, I'll probably try and exit at semi-final stage. But I just think they're a bit too big right now.
Okay, yes, particularly if they get through, they get that good draw, as Mark says. The shrewd Mark O'Hare is tipping up Tottenham Hotspur at 22.0 at the current prices. Miguel likes Bayern Munich and made the case for Liverpool at 12.5. Adrian is with Bayern Munich, and that Bayern Munich price is 7.0. So before we get into the 4 games, a reminder that if you have been listening to Weekend Football Podcast, you can follow the guys in on their podcast Best Bets. For new customers only, you get a double the odds, up to £50 in cash. Full details are available in the description below, and we'll give you a reminder when we do those best bets as well. Mentioned to Mark O'Hare is on 2 in a row for the long shots as well, so no pressure on this week's long shot, Mark O'Hare. So we'll get straight into it, and we'll start off with AC Milan versus Tottenham and take a look at the betting that we have at Matchbook.com. AC Milan are 2.6, Spurs available at 3.05. The draw is 3.45. Both teams to score, yes, 1.79. No's available at 2.2. The Asian handicap line is a draw no bet market, and that's favoured towards Milan at 1.84. The total is 2.5, and that's shaded towards the under. So, look, on this one, we'll go to you, Miguel, for this. You do like the Tottenham to get a result here, and you've combined them with both teams to score no. This is a pretty big price.
Yeah, I mean, on the face of it, this match is basically, it's a struggling Tottenham. To be fair, have been struggling as well. Maybe some signs are coming back, and you would think it's going to be a 50-50 game when you throw in issues like Conte's record in Europe, everything going on around Spurs. And I think this feeds into what Mark was saying about the price for Spurs. If we stand back, this is a game between the 6th or 7th most powerful club, most financially powerful club in Europe right now, and in real terms, what it means to the squad. And what that then means for why Milan are having an inconsistent season. Basically, a club right now from Europe's 3rd tier financially. You'd say, I know they had a good year last year to win the title and getting back into the Champions League, but it's still Milan are undergoing a process of transformation now that can be seen in that squad that isn't going to be as consistent the way you would think repeat champions could be. And I thought that really translated in 2 games I went to in autumn, which is where Chelsea, and let's not forget, Chelsea, because everyone we've seen since, they're kind of figuring themselves out under Graham Potter, quite easily swatted them aside, both home and away. And I think I'm kind of looking at the game in that framework. Milan historically a bigger club than Tottenham, all those Champions Leagues, but in this, I just feel it could be one of those kind of forgiving ties that the bigger leagues, the wealthier league, should I say, get now. And I actually fancy Tottenham to get through this relatively comfortably. Okay,
and if you do want to back that sort of price, 5.8 Tottenham to win to nil, or Tottenham and both teams to score pair it no. Adrian, you're putting up both teams to score no here. I take it you're not as confident as Mark and Miguel on Spurs perhaps getting a win here and dominating.
I couldn't hang my hat on either team, if I'm being perfectly honest. I know that Milan are having a really bad spell. They did win at the weekend 1-0 against Torino, but prior to that, they've been on a run of defeats, really poor performances as well, not scoring very many goals, looking a little bit vulnerable at the back as well. So yeah, I can absolutely see why Miggs would be going for Spurs here. I think over 2 legs, I would definitely make them favourites to progress. But Spurs have just been walloped really by Leicester City. They're wildly inconsistent. Bentancur is definitely a top player in the heart of their midfield. I rate him highly. And what have they got to come in? Is it Pape Sarr? I think it might be. And that's quite a big step up for him, I think, to come into that lineup. It's an important part of the field. Puts a lot on Højbjerg's shoulders, I think, to dominate and dictate inside the heart of the engine room. So yeah, I think that there has to be doubts over Tottenham whenever they play at the moment. And you can absolutely say the same about Milan. The reason I'm going both teams to score no is because Milan have been really flat going forward of late. Performances have been pretty dry. And Spurs in the group stages did blank in 2 of their 3 away games. So, you know, they didn't score. Just trying to think of the games that they didn't score. And they scored a couple in Marseille, didn't they? But yeah, they blanked in Lisbon. They blanked in Frankfurt, Tottenham Hotspur. And it wouldn't surprise me if this was a goalless draw, or if they lost 1-0 in a poor game at the San Siro. That's how I see it. But I can also see it from Mig's perspective here. Spurs have got the firepower, haven't they, with Son and Kane and Kulusevski.
Okay, yeah, Mark, over to you. You put up a couple of selections here. One is both teams to score. Yes, so just make the case, I guess, and why you see this being maybe more open game than Miguel and Adrian perhaps think.
Yeah, well, it's about the players who aren't there, really. Hugo Lloris between the sticks, which means Fraser Forster comes in. Whatever you think of Lloris and his form this season, that's an obvious downgrade. We do get Romero back from suspension, but no Bissouma, no Bentancur, and actually Højbjerg is suspended as well. So that leaves a gaping hole in midfield. I think you've got Ollie Skip and Papi Sarr playing in central midfield for this match for Spurs, which is quite concerning. But the flip side is going forward. You've got Harry Kane, you've got Son, who's starting to rediscover some of his form, Kulusevski, Danjuma, Richarlison, Pedro Porro, that's a January signing, who is an exceptional wing-back who had a torrid debut on it at the weekend, but going forward, he's as good as most fullbacks or wing-backs in this competition. So I can see Spurs causing Milan problems on the counter-attack. We've already heard Stefano Pioli come out and say that he realises, at home, at the San Siro with the backing there, they need to go to London with a good result behind them, and he's expecting he wants his Milan team to play on the front foot. But this is a Milan team who've, they've had a tough time of it of late. Friday night wasn't completely convincing, and their form has been off for a while, actually. It goes right back to when they were 2-0 up against Roma at the San Siro, conceded 2 stoppage time goals, and they've just fallen apart since then. He's tried to switch systems to add a bit more sort of resolve to their defensive setup, but they still conceded 2 goals or more in 5 of 6 before the Torino game, and they really should have conceded at least 2 goals when they lost at home to Inter 10 days ago as well. So for them, Benacer is still question mark about his availability. Tomori's trained, which is a big bonus for him at centre-half, but Leao hasn't looked himself. There's been contract wrangles and fallouts with him and Pioli as well. So, but ultimately, Milan haven't replaced Frank Kessié since his move to Barcelona. The signings last summer weren't adequate enough to sort of take them to the next level, and they've been left sort of looking a little bit weak and short in certain areas. Mainly on their goalkeeper still absent as well. So both teams have got key absentees or key areas of weaknesses, but I still think there's enough quality in 4 areas to allow both teams to oblige. And ultimately, my other bet, which is Spurs plus a quarter at around about the same price as BTTS, appeals here because, as Miguel says, Chelsea, who are hardly in sort of the best form of the campaign, beat Milan with room to spare, really, home and away. So I think Tottenham can at least get a result here. So if you back Spurs plus a quarter at 1.8, the only way you don't make money is if Milan win this match. But I do like both teams to score now at 1.8. I wasn't aware of Højbjerg's suspension until Monday morning. So that is obviously a feather in the cap if you fancy goals.
Yeah, I'm finding this game very tough to call, and there is a lot of disagreement coming up in the podcast. I'm going to sit on the fence on this one and say it's a no bet. Tottenham are a bad team to read at the best of time. So starting off the camp.
That is a real blow in terms of the midfield, isn't it? They've emptied their midfield. Obviously, they lost their goalkeeper. It's a big question mark, but there is you can see the case for them hurting Milan inside the final third. It's a funny game, this one.
Yeah, look, we don't have to bet in every game, but look, hopefully one of the guys persuaded you. Perhaps, maybe Miguel's the flyer in the ointment there. Tottenham both teams to score now 5.8. Adrian both teams to score now 2.18. Mark the opposite with both teams to score 1.78, but split stakes with Spurs plus a quarter of a goal at 1.81. We'll move on to the second game. Now, this is the game I'll be watching anyway on Tuesday night. It's PSG versus Bayern Munich. We'll take a look at the betting as we currently have it on Matchbook.com, and it's a coin flip essentially. PSG 2.66, Bayern 2.68. The draw is available at 3.9. Both teams to score 1.81. 1.53, so it should be a good game. The Asian handicap line is a draw no bet market. PSG marginal favourites in that, 1.97, Bayern 2.0, and the goal line is 3.0, and that's shaded towards the over. So look, Adrian, over to this one. I mentioned these matches are tough to call. Make the case for Bayern. You've already made the case in the outright, so maybe perhaps going into this game, how you see it playing out.
Yeah, I just don't think PSG keep enough clean sheets in the competition, and I don't think that Bayern Munich are the sort of side that are going to get blown away like some others could, but by their all-star attack. It does look like Messi, Mbappe and Verratti are back in training. They've obviously been out of late. So PSG will definitely be boosted by their returns. How fit are they? Are they being rushed back in for this game? There's a possibility that is the case, because really this is what PSG's season is all about, the Champions League. So are they ready for the game? That is the question. I looked at the last 5 games for PSG in all competitions. Both teams have scored. Go back a bit further in the Champions League. 11 of the last 12 Champions League matches involving PSG have seen both teams to score land. Now, I'm not backing both teams to score because it's so skinny. I think it's 1.5 or even lower than that. It's really, really short. So I can't go there. But what it does, it makes me think, well, if they're going to concede, which I think the likelihood is that they will at least once, then are they going to have enough to win the game? And I have my suspicions. I think that Bayern Munich are capable of scoring more than one goal at the stadium, and potentially not crumble at the other end because of their Champions League experience, because they've got a really smart head coach, and you know, I'm backing them to win the whole competition. So I'm backing them to beat PSG over 2 legs, and I think they can get a good result here. This is a PSG side that aren't in brilliant form domestically. They've had a bit of a wobble, been short on bodies obviously in recent games, but yeah, I just get the feel that Bayern come into the match in a much better place than PSG. And based on their perfect group stage, I think that they're capable of at least drawing. And if we get Bayern Munich onside draw no bet, then we'll get our money back at least.
Yeah, it's kind of tipped up in the document earlier was 1.93. That's out to 2.0 as well. Bayern draw no bet too, so perhaps a decent price. Miguel, over to you. You're going to this game, and firstly, tell the listeners a little bit about your busy week coming up, and then maybe a play on this game. So.
Yeah. So I mean, actually, it would have been maybe a little bit more serene. And I have to say, the sort of trip you gotta dream about when you're a young journalist. So I was supposed to be going to Paris for Paris Saint-Germain Bayern, and then it would have been a nice, easy flight from Paris to Barcelona for the Manchester United press conference ahead of the Barcelona United game on Thursday. But of course, instead, in the middle of that, we've now got the what might well be the title showdown, Arsenal City. So I'm going to Paris tomorrow, Paris Saint-Germain Bayern, back to London on the Eurostar for Arsenal on Wednesday, and then back out to Barcelona for the United game on Thursday. So busy few days.
Yeah, it's you're a man that gets around in Europe, Miguel. But look, it is a busy week, and look, 3 competitions as well. That's just class. And on this game, is there any bias now that you're going to this game? You think there's going to be goals, Miguel, or is it just set up for that game no matter how it plays out?
Well, I mean, the one that's conditioned my thinking here is basically their quarter-final first leg 2 years ago, which is 3-2, one of the games of the season, could have been 6-5. And even the next game, Paris, it was only 1-0. It wasn't quite as good a match even in terms of flow, but still so many chances created. Paris went through that time. And I just feel, especially given the form of the teams, given the way they play, I feel there's going to be a lot of chances in this game, and that potentially translates into another high-scoring match. Especially, I mean, and again, it's another influence of the away goal going, that these are all kind of just free-for-alls now. Hence, I mean, I wouldn't rule out another 3-2 either way. I'd be more confident with Bayern a little bit, especially with, you know, some doubts about Mbappe's fitness, although I think he will play. And I mean, like, you've obviously got Messi and Neymar, who are obviously going to have hangovers from the World Cup for different reasons. But yeah, I fancy a lot of chances to be created here. And again, we know how Nagelsmann sets up. PSG have been so open, and yeah, I think this could be a 3-2, but I'm gonna leave it a bit more open ended and go for over 3.5.
Yeah, 2.4 the current price for that. So Miguel likes goals, but is kind of leaning Bayern Munich. Adrian more stronger on Bayern Munich, Mark. So make the case for PSG.
Well, I definitely make the case for goals, at least. That was certainly one of my sort of ways in here. But I thought the over 3 line was odds on was already a little bit tight. So, yeah, the market has moved quite significantly over the past month. So PSG opened around 2.3 to win this game, moved right out to about 2.8-ish, but now sort of coming back in because of the news that Mbappe could or should be available now as well. He's trained on Monday, which means he's in the squad along with Verratti and Messi, as Adrian says too. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons, if you look at the form for PSG, to fold to here. They've not convinced in big games this season. They've only won once in 5 against the top 4 in France. They lost in the Coupe de France last midweek against Marseille, beaten quite badly by Monaco at the weekend. But I wouldn't read too much into that. There was no Mbappe or Messi, and 3 or 4 players were ruled out with a virus close to kickoff as well. So they weren't anywhere near their best 11 at the weekend. And also, I mean, remember, this team struggled home and away against Juventus, failed to beat Benfica home and away in the group stages as well. But it's a big but. There's so many quality, world-class performers in that squad with the potential to produce, particularly in Paris and particularly in the knockout stage of the Champions League. This is what the squad has been built for. This is what the club is all about. This is the match that matters most. Messi will play, Neymar will play, Verratti will play. I'm expecting Mbappe to play, possibly from the bench, but I expect him to be involved. And if Mbappe starts and he's anywhere close to full fitness, that for me would worry me massively for Bayern Munich because of how Nagelsmann sets up that defence. Just too high. PSG might not be defending too great, but PSG are going to pick holes in that defence. No bones about it, really. And they haven't been the juggernaut we've come to expect, Bayern. You mentioned it there at the top, Dan, about Bayern's domestic form. There's pressure on Nagelsmann. Even the win against Wolfsburg 10 days ago looked good on paper, but Bayern scored 4 goals from 0.51 XG and conceded 22 shots in that match. Defensively, they are gettable. De Ligt has looked incredibly uncomfortable in possession and out. If he's hassled and harried, there's a weakness there. There's no Lucas Hernandez, no Neuer, still no Mane either. Upamecano has been turned inside out a couple of times recently. And then, yeah, you might have Alonso's recovery pace there, but they insist on playing that high line. It really worries me. Move into midfield. Kimmich's not been at his best. Goretzka's struggled to influence matches the way he used to. And up front, is it Choupo-Moting or Müller to lead the line? Neither are Robert Lewandowski, really. So I just think PSG deserve to be favourites here. The market seems to be moving back that way now with Mbappe, in the squad for this match too. So my bet was PSG plus a quarter. I put it in at 1.78. It's already gone into 1.72, so obviously much less attractive. But I still think PSG get something out of this game. I still think they deserve to be favourites. And as Miguel says, the last meeting in 2019-20 was a humdinger in the first leg, 3-2. Would not be surprised to see something similar.
Yeah, another really tough game to call, and the next one is pretty similar as well. It's tough to come in after Mark O'Hare to head in with Bayern, but I do think that price now around 2.0 on Bayern drawn about. We'll lock that in as the podcast bet. But again, another fascinating game to see how that goes. And incidentally, all the guys' selections that they put up today will be available on insights.matchbook.com. It's all big games this week. Dortmund versus Chelsea, Wednesday night. We're going to lead with Mark here, and we'll just take a look at the betting quickly that we have at matchbook.com. Dortmund 2.48, Chelsea available at 3.15. The draw is 3.45. Both teams to score yes is 1.76, no is 2.26. The Asian handicap line sees Chelsea have a quarter of a goal head start at 1.86, and the goal line is 2.5. Mark, it feels like Graham Potter's had 2, maybe 3 starts to his Chelsea career with the World Cup break as well as all these new signings, and they're just such a hard team to place. I don't really know where they're at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know either, to be honest. And it's what makes this the hardest game for me to assess out of all of them. I've opted for Chelsea plus the quarter, which is now 1.86. It was 1.81 when I put it into the sheet. They've obviously not been anywhere near as strong as perhaps we expected. Still so many question marks around them. New faces, huge squad, mid-season rebuild. But I just think in terms of quality on a big Champions League night, they'll have the bulk of the outstanding players on their side. Obvious match winners in Mudryk and João Felix. And I think Enzo Fernandez has already made an impact. And he'll have his hands full trying to keep Jude Bellingham quiet. And I think that's a really terrific duel to look forward to. But Chelsea have been really inconsistent, but I do think they are very slowly trending in the right direction, even if results don't necessarily say so. Reece James, Ben Chilwell back, Kovacic due back as well. I think Sterling, Fofana and Zakaria are also supposed to be available for this too. So some really, really strong options for Potter. Dortmund, really difficult to read. They've looked at a different team since Sebastian Heller's come back into the side. He's been starting an attack. They've effectively changed their system to suit him. Results have been positive. They've been playing more of a 3-5-2, trying to play off him, use his physical presence, use the width well. But actual performances haven't been as good as perhaps results have suggested. They've not been really convincing. Defensively, they are still vulnerable, especially down those flanks because they have such attacking fullbacks and wingbacks. And I think it's interesting to note they get to keep a clean sheet in 9 against top half teams in the Bundesliga, and they've conceded 2 goals more in 6 of those games as well. Saying all that, they did give Man City 2 really good workouts in the group phase. The second was more meaningless because of City pretty much being through. But at the Etihad, Dortmund were the better team until sort of Haaland kind of had a late intervention. The kind of offset that, though, was in the other 4 games against a really poor Sevilla team and Copenhagen. They weren't very good at all. So really hard to read, but so are Chelsea. So just because it sounds pretty bleak to do it this way, but just look at the wage budgets between the 2 teams. Chelsea are so strong, so well stocked in world-class talent across the board. I just kind of have to give them the nod, knowing that I've got the draw on side as well. So the only way this bet loses is if Dortmund win this first leg. So Chelsea plus a quarter, which is now 1.86.
Okay, Mark taking a leaf out of Miguel's book and looking at the wages and perhaps those teams and the money invested as maybe tipping it in their favour. Adrian, you're on the opposite end in terms of Dortmund. So what don't you like about this Chelsea team at the moment? I guess I know it's hard to tell, but it can give us something that you're not quite liking at the moment.
Well, we don't know what they are, do we? That's the bottom line. We don't know what team he's going to pick for a start, do you? He's going to have the pick of a lot of talented players, but there's no rhythm, is there, in terms of team selection? There's those partnerships, those pieces of chemistry aren't really being forged too much because from one week to the next we see different players in different positions. Talent-wise, they're unbelievable, aren't they? And like all of the new signings, Joao Felix looks really sharp. Enzo Fernandez is a top player. Mudryk, even though his output has been disappointing to this point, he's so quick and he's a game changer in the making, isn't he? And they are going to be a really good team, Chelsea. I'm pretty sure of that. But in the here and now, Dortmund are much more settled, aren't they? They're more settled in their own skin. They've won 7 in a row. Since the restart after the World Cup. So you contrast that with Chelsea's form, albeit in a stronger division in the Premier League. And you think, well, okay, Dortmund couldn't really be coming in much better shape, although I take Mark's view on the performances not being that good, even though the results have been fine. So no, I just think home advantage up against the Chelsea side that is not yet on the same wavelength. I think they could have problems containing them. I think Bellingham's got a chance to be a real star of this game. And to be honest, those games against Manchester City, I did watch both of them and I was really impressed with Dortmund. So maybe my view on them is slightly skewed because I saw those matchups and thought, wow, they're a decent team, Borussia Dortmund. So yeah, all of that put together, I'm seeing Dortmund winning the game. And I'm going to pair it with under 4.5 goals. I say that because 14 of the last 15 matches in all competitions for Chelsea have seen under 3.5. So they've been involved in a lot of tight, low-scoring games. And when you look at Dortmund in the Champions League, certainly less free-scoring than they are domestically. So I don't see this being a free-for-all.
To complete the trio, Miguel, in terms of the match results selections, you're going with the draw here. I guess you're taking a bit of both from Mark and Adrian and setting it up beautifully.
Well, I mean, with Chelsea, it's if despite all these signings, all these changes, rather than them kind of transforming the profile of what the team is, it's as if they've just been absorbed into Potter's approach and where he's sort of recreating Brighton in the sense that we're seeing like the same things. Lots of kind of possession, not as many chances as you'd expect, not as much creation as you'd expect, and a lot of draws. And for that, I think with this game, it's a pretty logical decision as well, especially with it being at Dortmund. And the Dortmund will fancy the chances a bit, I think. I think they'll go at Chelsea, even allowing for kind of, I suppose, trying to figure out what Dortmund are right now. And it does just feel, even allowing for what I said earlier as well about kind of where the Premier League is right now. With Chelsea, they're quite a strange side at the moment and playing well beneath the talent they have, which is obviously a lot of talent given all the signings. Yeah, I feel quite confident about a draw here, as we'll discuss later.
Yeah, and you pair it with that both teams to score. Miguel, 4.6, that takes the 1 in, all in, 2 all, even beyond that as well. So, me personally, for the podcast, I'm gonna go with Adrian here in Dortmund and under 4.5 goals. I was looking at that outright price of around 55.0 this morning on Dortmund as well. I think I'll be taking a bit of that. So that bias is skewing me a little bit, but I do think that's the marginal decision for the podcast. Dortmund under 4.5, 3.05 for Adrian. Mark's going with Chelsea plus a quarter of a goal at 1.81. And Miguel drawn both teams to score 4.6. You may not think this game is the biggest game coming up, Bruges versus Benfica, but of course our Mark's mate, Scotty Parker, is now managing Club Bruges. So we'll take a look at the betting as we have it at Matchbook.com. You can back Bruges or Brugge, depending who you talk to, 4.4, Benfica 1.94. The draw is available at 3.8. Both teams to score yes is available at 1.81. The Asian handicap line sees Bruges get a plus half a goal start at 2.04. And the total is 2.5, and that's shaded towards the over at 1.91. Adrian, over to you on this one. There is agreement by and large with the guys throughout the podcast on this game. Firstly, for you, is it Club Bruges, Club Brugge? Because different commentators say different things. So
I feel more comfortable saying Bruges, to be honest, but everyone seems to be saying Brugge these days, so I should probably go down that route. Scott Parker's there, as you said. Zero new manager bounce. I think that much is fair to say.
Are we surprised?
His record, I think. I'm pretty sure his record is 1-1, drawn 5, lost 1, which isn't great when you're one of the giants of Belgian football. They're struggling to beat anyone. They've won just twice since the Champions League group stage finished. Now, I mean, we've been away ages. We've had a World Cup in between. We've had a lot of domestic action. They've won twice, Brugge. So not in good nick. They didn't finish that group stage very well either. They had that lightning start, if you remember, and then they didn't score in their final 3 group stage games. So they're not in a good place coming into the match. Benfica obviously lost Enzo Fernandez in the window, but they had a great group stage, I thought. Really, really impressed with them. A couple of draws with PSG when they made life really, really awkward for them, and they beat Juventus twice, which isn't to be sniffed at. You look at their domestic form, pretty solid as you'd expect it to be over in Portugal. João Mario's in good form. They've got Gonçalo Ramos up front, who I think he's back from injury and will be available for this game, and I think he's got real class. He looks a top player to me. A striker that we're going to be talking about a lot in the years to come. So, yeah, for me, this one's quite straightforward. I can't make any kind of case for the Belgians, even though they're on home turf. I think that Benfica's experience, the personnel that they've got, the quality of their manager Schmidt, and just what we saw from them in the group stage tells me that they should have too much for Scotty Parker's Belgian side.
Yeah, Miguel, over to you. Firstly, what did you make of the move for Scotty Parker? I thought it was as random as it gets, really.
Yeah. I mean, fair play to him in that sense, given there probably is, especially given the amount of money in English football now, that does go right down to the Championship. It would be the easier decision to try and stay in England, but it kind of tests his horizon, it expands his horizons while testing, even kind of exposing him to another game, another context. It broadens him as a manager. So I think it's to his credit. Not sure Brugge, or I'd still say Bruges, even from the film. I'm not sure their horizon.
Great film, by the way.
Yeah. I'm not sure their horizon will be expanded in the Champions League. I mean, Benfica, there's obviously been so much focus on Napoli, rightly so, but Benfica are quite an interesting team to look at this season as well, I think. And especially with the way this draw has worked, could be another that turn out of a surprise that go far. Now, of course, they've lost Enzo Fernandez. It's going to affect how the team functions, but they should still have too much for Brugge here. So, yeah, going for a straight win.
Yeah, and Mark, I was joking at the top about Scott Parker, but you aren't a fan overall.
No, I'm not. I mean, amazing move for him. What a great opportunity to go, not just to test yourself elsewhere, but to go and live and coach in a city like Bruges. It's beautiful. So, yeah, full credit to him, but just a really baffling call from the hierarchy at Club Brugge to believe that he's the right man to kind of carry on the job. And as Adrian says, there's been no new manager bounce at all. Their only victory under him came against Zulte, who are battling against relegation. So I thought it was quite premature, really, to get rid of Karl Huifkens around Christmas time. Felt harsh. They had been going through a bit of a slump and suffered a sort of surprise cup exit, but things haven't exactly improved, really. And if you look at the underlying metrics since Parker's gone in there, Club Brugge are sort of trending towards being a bang average mid-table team, which is a really poor look for a team who should really be dominating this division. So the goals have dried up. As you can imagine, they've had plenty of possession, but very little penetration, which is something Park has been known for. Scored 2 or more goals in 3 of the last 11 domestic games and managed just 1 clean sheet in 14. That's just a really nasty mix coming into a Champions League knockout tie. Ferran Jutler, their outstanding striker, is injured until the end of the month as well, which is a massive blow too. But so it's very hard to be pro Club Brugge, but the price on Benfica is short enough for me. In fact, it was slightly off-putting actually seeing them around 1.9. It's hard to sort of read too much into domestic form, which has been strong. But as we all know, Enzo is a big loss, and you could say they could be weaker on paper than they were before the Champions League finished. So, just looking at the price, should they be odds on in Brugge? I'd say both are probably weaker since when the draw was made. But what's interesting is Porto went to club on match day 5, and Porto went off at 2.35. Now Porto were around 2.3 when they hosted Benfica. So very tiny sample, obviously, but that's saying that the market rates Porto and Benfica equal in a domestic game. But that's a decent difference between the two teams going away to Brugge. Now, I guess the deciding factor here is Porto did thrash Brugge 4-0 that day. So perhaps the market is just redressing the balance from that. But yeah, just enough really to sort of suggest to me that I don't really want to be taking odds on quotes in a knockout tie for an away team. So just to boost it to something more palatable, I included under 4.5 goals here. But it's not a huge view on this match. I'm quite happy to pass this one up, but the guys are pretty confident on Benfica. I expect them to win. The price just couldn't get me over the hill. So just to add it in that sort of sub market, just to give it a bit of a boost.
Okay, yeah, if you want that boost from 1.91 to 2.32, check in the under 4.5. We'll lock in on the podcast Benfica 1.91 or 10 to 11 in fractional terms. We've also locked in Dortmund and under 4.5 as a podcast bet at 3.05 against Chelsea, and Bayern Munich drawn a bet, tentative selection away to PSG. Insights.matchbook.com, the place to find all the tips from the guys Monday afternoon. We're going to go to long shots, Miguel. We'll start with you on this one. You were kind of leaning towards this sort of scoreline with Dortmund versus Chelsea. So take it away. 1-1. I will say they're currently 7.0. The lay is in and around 7.8. So this will probably end up being 7.4, 7.6 on Matchbook. So do check that out the hour before kickoff.
Yeah, I do like going for the straight scoreline in these, I have to say. Almost a test of you. But yeah, Dortmund 1, Chelsea 1. Just feels like it's fitting in with everything with Chelsea right now. And Potter. And it is interesting because it's asking some of the bigger questions that will be asked of. I mean, they're asked when he got the job, but they're also going to be asked by the dressing room if this sort of form continues, which is whether a job this big was too early for him. Now I know it might be early to say that, but you can already feel kind of, certainly from the stands, as okay, it's not outright kind of criticism of Potter yet or anything, but it's kind of a growing discontentment. And you can see it on social media among match-going Chelsea fans as well. But I mean, on the face of it, 1-1 away to Dortmund isn't a bad score. It's certainly better than kind of drawing at home to Fulham, say, just because of where Chelsea are and where any game at Stamford Bridge. But yeah, 1-1 seems the logical option there.
It's interesting comparison. I know a lot of people comparing Potter to Arteta, and people forget that Arteta terrible run happened during lockdown, so there were no fans at the Emirates to kind of voice their opinion, and maybe that helped him get through that slump perhaps. Adrian, over to you. PSG 1, Bayern Munich 2, 11.5 here, decent enough price. It is that sort of scoreline you can see 2-1 either way.
Yeah, as we were all talking through the game, we were all talking about both teams scoring, could easily be a really high scoring affair. I think both boys mentioned, a 2-2 or a 2-3 either way. I'm slightly more cautious, given that there's that second leg to come. But I can see, obviously, you can always see PSG scoring at least once, and I think they probably will in the game. But for me, Bayern Munich are a pretty well-rounded professional outfit, and I think they can pick off a really open PSG in this match, especially if Mbappe isn't playing from the start or isn't fully fit. I give them the slight edge. So yeah, 2-1 Bayern, it seems plausible. And it's a good price.
Okay, and again, that could be a small bit bigger given the lay options and when the liquidity gets into the Matchbook betting exchange. And Mark, I'll read out the last two long shots you've had. Wolves and under 3.5 versus Liverpool. Wolves won 3-0. And then Monaco and both teams to score against PSG. I bet I couldn't really get behind myself. Monaco won 3-1. So take it away. No pressure for 3 in a row here in the long shot.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
those prices incidentally 5.6 and 5.5.
Yeah, I wanted to back PSG to win and both teams to score in this, but I think it falls below the threshold. I think it's 4.5. So I've gone for Spurs to win and both teams to score at 6.0 as a reasonable alternative. Milan at home, Pioli's already said his team will have a go and believe that they have to get a good result at the San Siro if they're going to have realistic aspirations to qualify. And Tottenham, as we know, missing Bentancur, missing Højbjerg and missing Hugo Lloris as well. So there will be an opportunity for the Rossoneri to put them under pressure. A great shop window as well for Rafael Leao in forward areas. But ultimately, for me, Spurs just have too much firepower. Just a really consistent goal threat with one of the best finishers the game's probably ever seen. There's pace, there's power, there's trickery elsewhere as well. And we saw Chelsea score 2 and 3 goals quite comfortably against this Milan team in the group phase. And Milan haven't really kind of gone to the next level since then. Spurs too haven't been playing close to their best, but we saw against Man City that when they do turn up, they can be as good as the best too. So, their group performances were pretty bland, but I do think they can raise themselves now. I think they have the quality to be just more than a match for Milan this midweek. So yeah, 5-1, 6.0, nice price.
Okay, that's the long shots. We'll head over to the best bets. Reminder that if you don't have a Matchbook account, check out the description below on how to get double odds up to £50 in cash. We'll stick with you, Mark, because it's similar to your long shot. You're going for both teams to score yes in Milan Spurs, like the reasons you mentioned. You're just expecting an open game.
I am, yeah, just because of the players who are fit and available and those who aren't. But, this was a very last-minute swaps to both teams to score from my earlier selection of Spurs plus a quarter. Wouldn't be too surprised if both landed a 1-1 or a 2-1 Spurs win. So, yeah, I'm pro-Tottenham, as I will be in the home tie too. I'm very much against Milan. Their 2023 form has been poor at best, and I think Friday night was very scratchy and nervy. The way in which they saw off Torino weren't exactly deserving of the 3 points. So if Tottenham can go there and sense a bit of a lack of confidence in that home team, I think they're more than good enough to get a good result.
Okay, and Adrian, over to you. If in doubt, go with the team's team. Benfica away to Scotty Parker.
Exactly. Look, I think this is a tough slate of games. I really do. I think
I agree.
The first 3 matches are absolute pick'ems, in my opinion. You can make a case for either side, maybe with the exception of Milan, but yeah, I just feel that this is the standout tie in terms of there being a heavy favourite. And if Club Brugge can't beat mid-table Belgian sides, I just don't see them beating a Benfica team that drew twice with PSG and that beat Juve home and away. I just think that they've got a lot of quality this year, and I think they could be the surprise package to maybe certainly go to the quarters, but maybe even into the semi-finals this season, Benfica. So yeah, I'll take them on the nose.
Yeah, then their price indicates that in the outright market 30.0. And Miguel, along similar lines with Mark with the match result in Milan, but you do like both teams to score now. You just think Spurs are that superior to Milan for your best bet.
I just don't have much faith in Milan at the moment, to be honest. And I think, for all the focus will inevitably be on Spurs and that defeat to Leicester. Well, it's only 8 days since they beat Manchester City, and in a kind of tactical setup that I'd expect for this game. I don't think Milan don't really have that sort of firepower. I think Champions League will amplify it. So yeah, I would actually be considering almost a 1-0, 2-0 Spurs win with goals on the break.
Okay, yeah, Tottenham both teams to score no 5.8. You can double that odds, which will be in and around 10.6 as well. So do check that out. Insights on matchbook.com. It's a full list of all the guys' bets. They'll be available Monday afternoon. Quite popular these midweek because I know there's a lot going on. People are more busy. They want to get the tips. It will be full all there to check out. Insights.matchbook.com. The panel will be back on Thursday afternoon to preview the weekend football, and it's relentless club football until then. So my thanks to Mark, my thanks to Adrian, my thanks to Miguel. We'll chat to you on Thursday. Bye-bye.